SWORDSOUL Kashtira might legitimately be one of the best ways of playing Kashtira right now. This deck holds a ton of versatility centered around the prominent card Small World, while also genuinely just having the full power of a SWORDSOUL deck, minus a couple of hand traps, plus all of the highlights of the Kashtira cards. I experimented with bringing down the Kashtira package. We did eventually cut the preparations, even though we are playing Ogre, just a brick a lot of the time. But honestly, I think playing a rather large Kashtira package as we are is rather beneficial in a lot of situations. I'm just super impressed by this deck overall. I really am. I don't know why it's as good as it is, but it fucking is. And I'm here for it. It's a lot of fun. So if you're interested in this or anything else, of course, you can subscribe. Again, we're going to be covering off a bunch of different decks, and I do want to play this a little bit more, potentially even playing it live on one of our upcoming live streams. So if you want to catch that, make sure you subscribe. We're going to be doing a deck profile at the end of the video for those who missed our first video on the deck, as well as showing off some really good games that we had just while I was sort of sitting around in the Discord voice room and sort of testing the deck. It was just an absolute blast. So yeah, if you're interested in this style of content, subscribe, like the video, and if you have the means and you want to support the channel a little bit more, you can always join as a member as well. Every single member is definitely super appreciated. It is above and beyond in terms of providing support. But if it's something you're capable of doing, every little bit adds up, and I definitely appreciate it. But yeah, without any further ado, let's just get into the gameplay. Alrighty, now I just want to quickly point out before somebody else does in the comments, yes, I'm getting this lovely Kashtira glow because my wallpaper has been stripped and my whole room is purple, so it's glowing off my face, and it is messing with the lighting and the audio because of like echoes and different lighting. So just, I might clip it out of existence, might not be the nicest green screen experience, might see a little bit of echo, but you know, just know that that's temporary. We're repapering it, so. But anyway, this game was an absolute banger, right? My opponent, honestly, I was rooting for my opponent. He was playing a cooler deck than I was. He was playing a more based deck, but that's this is pretty based. We're gonna start off with the Ecclesia. Ecclesia, normal summon, tributing itself off, grabbing the Mo Yi. Pretty standard SWORDSOUL stuff here. No Kashtira cards to be seen. This is a SWORDSOUL hand, and again, hands like these win games. It's really not that tough. We're going to be going for the Grandmaster and the Mo Yi. Mo Yi draw one, chain blocking the Grandmaster, drawing into the Unicorn. Unfortunately not usable right now, but we're going to keep that in our back pocket for some follow-up. We're going to drop the Blackout, summon out the Strategist. Strategist plus the token into the Baron de Fleur. That gives us our negate. Then Strategist going to pay inflict 1200 damage. Summon out the Protoss, lock him out of Dark, and that is that. Now the Dark Lock in particular is very important. This is just bread and butter SWORDSOUL right here, and this is exactly what you want to be seeing. Plus we got a little Ash Blossom here and a Unicorn should shit hit the fan, but there's no way they play through this, right? Let's see, they're going to start with a Fenrir, activating Toy Vendor. That's right, we're playing against Fluffle, and holy crap did they give us a run for our money. They're going to drop Toy Vendor off of Toy Vendor, searching their deck for a card. They're going to summon out the Fluffle Dog activating as well as the Toy Vendor that we just sent to the graveyard. We're going to Ash the Vendor, and then we're going to Shizao the Dog. We're going to negate both of those search effects. Would definitely be problematic. He's got 3 cards left in the hand. In my sort of brain, I'm thinking to myself, there's no way he can generate that amount of resources off of a 3-card hand, especially considering he's locked out of Dark. All of the Freight for Fusions are dark except one. So surely there's nothing he can do here, right? He's going to go Fenrir, trying to banish the Baron. We're going to use the Imperm. We're going to negate the Kashtira Fenrir. That's A-okay by me. They're going to now link someone off into Nightmare Cerberus. They're going to Cerberus, target Baron de Fleur. They're going to force us to use our Baron de Fleur. We're going to pop it. He's to discard a card for cost. Again, 2 cards in hand, and we're popping his last remaining monster on the field. Surely there's no way he can come back from this. This man's only getting started. They're going to go for another Fenrir, activating the monster they just sent to the graveyard, banishing Fluffle Dog, drawing 2, sending Vendor, Vendor then adding another card from deck to hand. And just like that, they go from having nothing to having almost a full hand. That shit is incredible. They're going to normal summon out this little dork here. The Owl searches for Poly on summon. Going to use the Poly, fusion summon the 2 in hand to go into the Frightful Cruel Whale. Frightful Cruel Whale on summon, going to target a card in both fields and destroy them. And my Fluffle Cat's going to activate its effect, as well as the next effect of the Cruel Whale activating, sending a fusion monster from the extra deck to the graveyard to boost its attack up by half of its original attack, bringing it to 39. Bigger than all of our monsters, and it gets the popper on the floor, protecting his own card using the Imp Scythe in the graveyard. Now he's going to activate the spell card, summoning out the Fluffle Cat to the field. He chooses to get rid of the Grandmaster. I think he forgot that he was under a... I think he had already used Fenrir this turn. He swung in the Protoss, but again, that doesn't really matter. So yeah, our opponent is... It's not looking good for us. We got the Protoss though. What we're in a position where we have to choose between... we could declare Water to get rid of the Cruel Whale, but that leaves him open to using Dark cards. We could declare... and it also leaves his Fenrir in the field. We could declare Earth, that leaves him able to use Dark and the Cruel Whale. We could declare Dark, but that leaves Cruel Whale and Fenrir. There's not really a winning call here off of Protoss, but we decided we're going to call Earth anyway. Earth seemed to be the most impactful just in terms of providing an absolute menace to the opponent. We're just going to set Cross out and hope for the best here. We know for a damn fact that Protoss ain't going to survive this turn because they're going to boost himself up to 39 again, sending another card to the graveyard, destroying our Protoss, and suddenly our board is empty, which would be a bad thing, except we're playing Kashtira. We're going to start by using the Kashtira Unicorn, activating its effect, and to search our deck for Kashtira Birth. We're going to activate Birth, then we're going to flip up the Nobleman, the Crossout Designator. I was going to say the Nobleman of Crossout, no. 2005 Yu-Gi-Oh on the brain, but we're going to banish a Fenrir to summon a Fenrir. We're now going to go into Shangri-La, and using Shangri-La, we're pretty comfortable in passing because this card can resist being destroyed, and we get the special summon a Kashtira monster during our standby phases, bringing out a Fenrir. Fenrir, of course, vulnerable to destruction from the Cruel Whale, but it is going to discourage him from using any cards during main phase 1. We also get to wipe out half of his graveyard thanks to Kashtira Birth, and using our Shangri-La, we're going to start locking up zones here. He does manage to take out our Fenrir. Not the biggest problem in the world. We have Kashtira Birth on the field, so we're going to be able to basically win this grind game, and I'm pretty sure our opponent realizes that very quickly. They're going to go for the Unicorn from the deck, using Birth, bringing back the Fenrir from the graveyard. We're going to use the Fenrir, get Search in. We're going to grab ourselves a Rise Heart. We're going to normal summon the Ecclesia, use its effect. Ecclesia is going to get hit with Call by the Grave, stopping us from going into the likes of a Taya, which would have been brutal, right? On top of everything else, summoning out Taya. Just to go into some more SWORDSOUL plays, but we go for Kashtira Birth, banish the rest of his graveyard, running out of resources. We're going to go Shangri-La, we're going to block up another zone, we go Rise Heart, and from here, we actually had a full board lock in terms of we were going to be able to lock up his entire board of monsters and block all the zones with Shangri-La, but our opponent unfortunately scooped up before we could. There you go. Pivoting from playing an absolutely bomb turn 1 SWORDSOUL board, getting crushed by Fluffle of all things, and then pivoting into a full Kashtira board after we get negated on the Ecclesia is just such a cool concept to me. I just love being able to pivot like that. It's absolutely amazing, especially whenever you open a mix. A mix is typically best, but there's not really a side of the deck you can open up that's bad, right? You either open up Kashtira cards or SWORDSOUL cards. And generally speaking, even a mix of those two isn't bad. The only ones you really don't want to see is like Ogre to an extent and Rise Heart. You definitely don't want to see Rise Heart. But for the most part, there's not a lot of cards that you don't want to see in your opening hand. And I think that's what makes this deck so versatile and powerful, is that most cards are useful, especially when you factor Small World into that equation. There's basically no singular card in your deck other than Rise Heart that you really don't want to see in your opening hand. But anyway, let's get into game 2. Alrighty, getting into game 2 here, we are going second this time, and you can see from the opening hand that we have a few plays. The only annoying part about the Tingy cards is that they sort of clash a little with your Kashtira cards, but you can normally find alternative use for them anyways, so it's very rarely a problem. We're playing into Rika here. Rika grabbing the Princess, activating the Rika Princess, summoning it out to the field, going to distribute it now for the Mudan. I'm not too overly familiar with Rika, but I do know it a little bit better now that I've played solo mode. They're going to go for Concom, which is absolutely brutal, setting Sheet from the deck. And now they're going to activate the Sunvine Sowing, paying 1,000, summoning out the Lokai. We're going to go Dryas activating its effect. They're going to search their deck for another Sunvine Sowing, but they've already used it this turn, so they're just going to pass. Now, we're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination, but luckily for us, we have the Kashtira cards, and now we even have the extender gas that we need to go through. We're going to summon out the Fenrir. Fenrir then activating, grabbing our Rise Heart. He actually allows that to resolve, so we're going to use this opportunity to go into the battle phase, targeting the field spell to banish it. He's going to use the Princess to negate us, and he's going to use the field spell to basically tribute as cost for that effect. And that's totally fine because we just wanted to eat up that interruption. We're going to go Unicorn now. They're going to tribute off their Mudan to target the Unicorn, which is sort of late, I guess. They do allow us to search for Kashtira Birth, but they do steal our Unicorn. We're going to go Birth. Activating the Ashuna, first of all, activating the Ashuna, summoning it out. We're going to go for the Emergence now. Ashuna being a level 7 is going to function great here alongside Birth. We're going to go for Mo Yi first, revealing the Taya, summoning the token. Now we're going to Synchro Summon into the Grand Master, and again, into the standard Sword Soul line. We're going to go Grandmaster Chain Link 1, Mo Yi Chain Link 2. We're going to draw 1. Then we're going to get the Search 1. Small World being a fantastic card to draw there as well. We grab the Strategist dropping the Taya, summoning itself, and another token going into the level 10, going into Baron de Fleur, so we can start wiping out this field. And we're going to use the Strategist, 1200 damage. That does actually trigger the Dryas, but I'm more than willing to use Baron to negate and destroy the Dryas. The reason being, number one, it eats up the Sunvine Sowing, which is neat, but primarily because I know I can tag Baron out into like a powerful Kashtira card during their standby phase, so I really don't mind using the negate early because I can tag it out into a really powerful card later, right? Baron de Fleur, popping the field spell, done looking at that. Kashtira Birth, bringing back the Fenrir, using the Rise Heart then in hand, summoning it out to the field. We're going to use these two to go in the Shangri-La before we make any plays with the Rise Heart, so we can banish the Unicorn off Rise Heart. Using its effect, we banish 3 cards from our opponent's deck face down. That's going to trigger the block zone up. Now we got Unicorn and Fenrir and the Grandmaster. Because of that maxi, we actually choose not to use Baron de Fleur's effect. He gets to draw 1 off the Fenrir summon, but we don't care. Unicorn's going to banish the Teardrop from their extra deck. We're going to continue to lock up their zones. They're going to go Sunvine Sowing, summoning out the Sunsea Twin, which is a little annoying. They're going to go Dryas here. Dryas then's going to grab them some additional things. We're going to use the Kashtira Birth in our graveyard. We're not even going to let him resolve that effect to bring back that Lokai. We're going to get rid of that shit right now. And again, because of Shangri-La, we're going to lock up another zone. Sunvine Healer activating its effect, going to basically heal, it's in the name. We're going to use Fenrir to banish the Sunvine Healer so we can open up its zone to be locked down by the Shangri-La next, right? So that's locked up. Its last opening monster zone is also blocked up, taking 3000 damage. I don't know if he thought he could trigger that more than once per turn. I know the higher link rating ones can, but this one can't. Into our turn, Fenrir going to grab the Ogre. We're now going to use Baron de Fleur, pop the Dryas. We're going to switch the attack mode, swing in with the Rise Heart, swing with Unicorn, banish a card from his extra deck, lock up his last remaining monster zone just for BM, and finish the game. This type of interaction, this type of board and flexibility that this deck offers you is absolutely incredible. It feels incredible. It just, when it works, it hella works. And you can normally turn any board into basically anything if you play your cards right. There's a lot of things in here that just search and grab and add and switch, and it's just really versatile. I absolutely love it. Let's get into the game too. And this time we're taking the hybrid in against the purebred. We're going to start with the Mo Yi, of course. Mo Yi revealing Strategist, going to get hit with the Maxi here. Luckily we have that designator. We did get pretty lucky, I think, with either A, our opponent like drawing Maxi at bad times, or B, having the ability to negate it. We do play a lot of outs to Maxi, and because of the Kashtira cards, we can genuinely like not really care too much about it. In certain situations, we can like summon out a Kashtira boss and like survive on it, right? So we care a little bit less about Maxi in this particular version of Sword Souls. Obviously not with that hand, but you know what I mean. We're going to go Small World finally here, grabbing the Adara. We're going to grab Adara for a reason. We're going to discard it now off of our Strategist. Summoning it out to the field, summoning a token face up as well, going into Baron de Fleur. Now we're going to use the Strategist, inflicting 1200 points of damage, grab the Protos, and now we're going to be able to use Protos, dropping the 3 different attributes from the graveyard, declaring Dark. This is textbook Sword Soul right here. This is textbook Sword Soul, and it's not the easiest thing to overcome. But Kashtira does not care about Protos. So we're gonna have to see how this works out. They're gonna dig through their deck for a evenly matched. That's a little bit degenerate, but we're gonna let it happen. We're going to now negate the evenly matched as it activates in the battle phase, praying he doesn't have a second one, because then I will hit my life, but luckily for us he does not. They're going to go for Unicorn now. Unicorn activating its effect. We're going to go for Grandmaster, banishing the emergence to negate the Unicorn. Again, this is a really good negate against Kashtira, because that birth really allows them to go crazy. Both its effects are negated. Gonna go Rhoda though. He just has Rhoda to go raw into the Rise Heart. Now they're gonna activate Rise Heart, summoning it out to the field. Gonna now banish cards from the top of my deck face down so they can boost this level up to 7 going into Shangri-La. Luckily for us at this point there isn't much else for them to do, and our Grandmaster does not have the ability to negate something, but unfortunately for our opponent, he doesn't know that. He just says that SWORDSOUL is simply too much for his tiny little brain to handle, and he scoops it up. What more do you want me to say? Pretty good. Let's get into the deck profile. I can't explain to you how happy I am that this idea works. And actually, literally, we just in the Discord, and it's randomly threw into the Discord, hey guys, what if we tried this? And you know what? It has actually evolved into one of my favorite decks of this format. I really love playing this deck. I don't know why. It just feels so good. It works so well. You really, I don't know if it's like just a personal thing, but I very, very rarely find myself bricking, especially compared to regular SWORDSOUL, because there's a lot of situations in regular SWORDSOUL where you like normal Moye and Veiler ends your turn, right? And that sucks. Imperm ends your turn. Ash usually doesn't, but Maxi does. So there's all of these like cards that you just like had your turn ended because you didn't draw like Strategist, right? Or you didn't draw. Well, I mean that's pretty much it. That's part of the problem. The only extent of a Strategist. So it's like, well, suck to suck. Whereas this time we have a load of really powerful boss monsters that punish hand traps, that absorb hand traps, and if they don't get hit with hand traps, they generate an insane amount of value even off their own backs. So this is good. I know not a lot of people play quite as big a Kashtira package as I do. Then again, not a lot of people play this deck, but those who do play it typically play less Kashtira cards. I tried it with less. I love seeing them in my opening hand. I really do. I love seeing it. The only time I ever don't like seeing them is if I like draw them off of Moye or something like that. But I do love seeing at least one level 7 Kashtira in my opening hand. So I play 6 in total. Being able to search for Birth as well is insane. I do play the one Rise Heart because searching for Rise Heart is insane as well. Whenever you're done your synchro plays, it just works, right? So let's break the deck down. Let's talk about it. We're going to start with the hand traps. Triple Maxi, of course. Triple Ash Blossom, of course. Double Cult By and single Crossout. You cannot allow Maxi to resolve. In this deck, you care slightly less about it than you do in pure SWORDSOUL, because luckily you can just special out a Fenrir or a Unicorn and guarantee yourself some form of advantage, or at least some sort of powerful boss monster on which you can lean until the next turn. So it's not like end of the world in this deck compared to regular SWORDSOUL, but it's definitely not a card you want to allow to resolve. So as many ways to negate it as possible. We are playing a 42 card deck, so you can technically cut the 2 copies of Imperm and bring it to 40, but I do think the double Imperm is fine. Playing it at 42 makes it slightly less likely that you're going to draw into your Birth or your Rise Heart, which are 2 cards that you don't really want to see in your opening hand. But again, it's not end of the world type card. They're still useful in hand, right? You would just rather search for them, but they're still really good to have in hand as well. But you know. So playing at 42 is fine. We play the double Imperm just to bring it up to that 42, but you don't have to. There's 9 flex spots if you don't play at a 40. Those 9 flex spots, they're not even flex spots. It's the Maxi package. Triple Maxi, triple Ash, double Crossout, or sorry, single Crossout, double Call By. You have to. You just have to. They're not even flex spots. They're not. I'm sorry. I'm putting them in. But you don't have to play the Imperm if you want to play it at 40, but I think 42 is fine. I like Imperm. So, Tenyis. We play Adara, single Adara, double Ashuna, double Vishuda. Again, pretty small package relative to how you would maybe play it in pure SWORDSOUL, but not much smaller. We play these guys primarily not only as discard fodder or revealing fodder for your Moye or your Strategist, things like that. That's definitely not Strategist. This guy is. They're also very good small world bridges, so you can use these guys. You can bridge any of your Kashtira cards into a level 7. Tenyi into any of your SWORDSOUL cards, right? Or you can bridge from a Tenyi through a Kashtira card to any of your Sword Souls, or you know, they're just really super well put together with Small World in particular. Especially Adara, you need to play Adara because that allows you to go into Fenrir, because none of your primary worms are Earth. So Adara acts as your Small World bridge. It can also technically grab Max C, which is neat. So definitely Adara. I would even be tempted to play this at 2 just because of how good it is with Small World. But 1 is fine. It hasn't been an issue thus far. You can grab Fenrir or Max C off of it, which is like the main things. But it's also still a worm, so you can technically just grab basically anything else. You can grab any of your Sword Soul cards. It's an amazing Small World bridge. Yeah, so that's the Tenyi stories. If you want to know how they actually work and what they do, they can all special summon themselves to the field while you control no effect monsters, and they all have an additional effect while you control a non-effect monster like a token or your monk. Adara will banish itself from hand or grave to add back a banished worm from your banished pile to your hand. Vishuddha will banish itself to send an opponent's card back to hand, and Ashuna will banish itself to summon a Tenyi monster from the deck, but you're locked in the worms for that turn. So you're not typically going to use Ashuna's effect super often, because that worm lock does hurt you more in this version than it does in most. The Vishuddha effect you will use on occasion. Adara's effect you'll use very rarely, because you're typically going to use this as a small rope bridge more than anything else, meaning it'll be banished face down already. Tenyu's super straightforward package. Let's talk about Sword Souls. I'm going to drop these hand traps from the deck because they're really throwing me off. In terms of where shit is, they're really throwing me off. Let's remove the Tenyus as well. We'll remove cards as we talk about them. We got the Sword Soul package. Triple Moyi, double Taya, triple Ecclesia, double Strategist, singular Protos, triple Emergence, and a single Blackout. So, how does the Sword Soul package work? Again, everybody knows, for God's sake, you summon tokens. You Synchro Summon, you win games. So your 3 main Sword Souls are Strategist, Taya, and Moyi. Moyi will, on summon, reveal a worm or Sword Soul card in hand to summon a token. Taya will, as an ignition effect, banish a Sword Soul card or a worm from grave to summon a token. And Strategist can discard a worm or Sword Soul card to special summon itself from hand alongside a token. And the tokens are all level 4 worm, tuner, water monsters, which means that they are how you're going to facilitate your Synchro Summons. Ecclesia is a level 4 spellcaster tuner that can special summon itself to the field if your opponent controls more monsters than you. It can also quick play tribute itself to special summon any Sword Soul monster directly from the deck. This basically just serves as additional copies of Moyi and Taya, but also in this particular version, it can also be a pretty decent extender. In terms of going into the likes of the Psychic and Punisher. On occasion, we have won games with that several times. One of them was even in our last video, so it does come up. So Ecclesia, definitely a 3 of, I think. Some people play this at like 2. I don't know why. I think this card is like almost a mandatory 3 of. This card's incredible. Excuse the pun. And then we've got, I should note that all of the Sword Soul cards also have an effect that activates when they're sent to the graveyard. Synchro material, Moyi draws 1, Taya will send a worm or Sword Soul card to the grave, and Strategist will do 1200 burn damage. They're pretty decent effects, but they're nothing to write home about, which is why I sort of skipped over them a wee bit. But they're definitely good. Moyi's effect in particular is very nice. That little draw 1, sometimes it matters. Arch Nemesis Protos. The Sword Soul engine makes this card searchable, which is nuts. You can special summon it to the field from the hand by banishing 3 monsters from the graveyard or field with different attributes, which you can do very easily. Everything in your deck is a different attribute. Even if you look back at your cards here, your Tenyi cards, everything's all different attributes, giving you plenty of gas for Protos. While it's face up, it can't be destroyed by card effects, and you can basically once per turn declare an attribute of a monster that's currently on the field. You destroy all monsters of that attribute, and neither player can special summon monsters of that attribute until the end of the next turn. So it's basically just a floodgate for an entire attribute. Normally you're going to call Dark because, number 1, it itself is a Dark, so it qualifies automatically, and it can't be destroyed by card effects, meaning it's not going to destroy itself. And so it doesn't cost you anything to use it, so it's great going first. Secondary to that, Dark represents like 60% of the tier list, at least. So Protos definitely hurts a lot of those decks, and is what gives Sword Soul a real fighting chance against the likes of tier limits, which would otherwise really hurt. So Protos is nuts. We have Emergence. Emergence will basically, it allows you to add a Sword Soul monster from deck to hand, but if you control a Synchro monster, you can add any worm instead. Normally what's going to happen is you want to search for this card or grab it or use it while you have the Grandmaster on the field, and then you can use it to grab your Protoss. Short of that, it still acts as additional copies of Moyi or Taya in particular, for a very good follow-up. And then we got Blackout. Blackout, you'll target a worm you control and 2 cards your opponent controls, destroy both. If this card ends up getting banished, you can summon a Sword Soul token out to the field. You can banish this from the graveyard off of Taya, or directly from the deck off of your Grandmaster, in order to put a token onto the board whenever you need one most. So that is definitely not an effect worth skipping over. It does come up, very seldomly, but it does come up. Then we've got the Kashtira cards: Fenrir, Unicorn, Ogre, Raise Heart, and Birth. So let's talk about the big three. Very similar to Sword Soul, Kashtira also has a big three. We have Fenrir, Unicorn, and Ogre. All three of these cards can special summon themselves to the field if you control no monsters. They all have search effects. Ogre cannot use his because we're not pulling any trap cards, so, you know, sad Ogre, I guess. Unicorn will search your deck for Birth. Fenrir can search your deck for another monster, usually the Rise Heart, unless you have a reason to search for something else. On occasion, you're gonna want to be a little bit sneaky with this card. You want to put yourself in positions where you're going to activate its search effect, and this card will subsequently be removed from the field. Like if they control a Fenrir, they're gonna want to banish yours before you can use your banishment effect. So if you search for the likes of a Unicorn, then they banish you. Well, now you can summon that Unicorn and just go to town. So that's also a very, very viable option. But normally you're going to search Rise Heart. So all three have a search effect, all three special summon themselves, and all three have an effect that activates either when they declare an attack or when your opponent activates a monster effect. Kashtira, Fenrir, will banish a face-up card your opponent controls. Unicorn will look at your opponent's extra deck and banish a card out of their extra deck, which is nuts in my opinion. I think that's incredible. And Ogre will look at the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck, and you get to pick a card among them and banish it, which is good, and not only in terms of information, because you get a little peek at what your opponent's about to draw, but you also get to potentially snipe one of their key resources, which is great. Then we have Raise Heart. Raise Heart, if you control a Kashtira, will special summon itself from the hand of the field, but it does lock you into Exceed only. You will use that effect a lot, but you'll typically only resolve it after your actual Sword Soul plays have been completed. And that it doesn't clash as much as you think it would. It really doesn't. I thought that was going to be a big hiccup, which is why I was tempted not to play this card, but it has won me so many games. So I think Raise Heart definitely has a one-of. It can be a little annoying to open with this card, sometimes, but most of the time I'm A-okay with it. So how does it work then and actually enable your rank 7s? Well, not only does it special summon itself, you can banish a Kashtira card from your deck, and then banish 3 cards from the top of your opponent's deck face down, and if you do, this card becomes level 7. So you get to wipe out some of your opponent's resources, and you get to banish a Kashtira card from the deck, which is very useful if you have the likes of Kashtira Birth, which will allow you to immediately bring that card back to the field, which is insane. We've done that play more than once. It does win you games. So do not sleep on that play. That is incredible. And of course, becoming a level 7 opens up a range of Exceed plays. We're only playing a couple though, but also let's not forget the fact that natively it's a level 4, which is not terrible in this deck because we play level 4 tuners alongside either Ecclesia or our Sword Soul tokens. So not only is it good for Exceed summoning, you can also, if you summon it without special summoning it off of its own effect, either by normal summoning it or bringing it out off of Birth, you can still use it as synchro material for the likes of Psychic and Punisher, or maybe a Dragite, maybe a Draco, something like that. So yeah, definitely very good. Any monster that modulates its level always has some sort of multiplicative purpose. Absolutely. Getting into the extra deck, we got Yazi. Yazi does not come up very often, but it can do and will win you games when it does. This card can, once per turn, target a card you control and a card your opponent controls and destroy both. And if this card ends up getting destroyed, you can special summon any worm you want directly from the deck. So this card will enable an entire Sword Soul board if you manage to summon it first. So it does unbrick you in certain situations. Very rare, but it does happen. Boxia. Boxia on summon will target cards on the field up to the number of different original attributes used for its summon, and it will spin those cards back into the deck. You can also destroy a card you control to bring back a level 4 or lower monster from your graveyard. Excellent card, great for going second. Draco Berserker. When your opponent activates a monster effect, so long as that monster is still in the location it was when it activated, you can banish that monster. If it destroys an opponent's effect monster by battle, it gains that monster's attack points permanently and can attack again. So it's got a built-in interruption, and it's incredibly aggressive. It can wipe out boards of monsters and can do incredible amounts of damage. Draco is dope. We got Dragout. If you got a water monster in grave, this card is a spell or trap negate once per turn. We got Grandmaster. This card serves dual purpose, and we're playing 2 copies of it because it is pretty damn important. Whenever it's synchro summoned, you can add to your hand or banish a SWORDSOUL card from your deck. So normally you're going to search for the likes of Emergence or for Strategist. These are basically the only 2. Emergence to grab Protos, or Strategist because it's Strategist. And you'll typically get playing. It also has the ability to banish a Worm monster or SWORDSOUL card from your hand or graveyard to target a monster in the field and negate its effects until the end of the turn. But it can't use both effects in one turn, so it's 1 effect per turn. Still absolutely amazing. Get searching on the turn in which it's summoned, which ideally is your first turn, and then start negating every turn after that is absolutely dope. And you can also banish the likes of Blackout directly from your deck if you need to put additional tokens on board. And that does actually come up in situations where you've got like a Moyi Strategist or something like that, because you'll summon Moyi, let's say it gets hit by Imperm. Well, now you can summon out your Strategist, use Strategist token and the Moyi to go into Grandmaster. Grandmaster banishes the Blackout. Well, now your Blackout summons a token to replace the one that you otherwise would have had, and you still get your level 10 synchro. So absolutely don't sleep on that play. It can come up. Not super often, but it can come up. We got our level 10s. We got Baron de Fleur. Once while face up, negate a card. Once per your turn, pop a card. Pretty straightforward. We got the Supreme Sovereign here. Of course, in his native deck for a change. So, for each banished card, he gets bigger by 100 attack and defense, and all your opponents get smaller by 100 attack and defense. If it would be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish a card from the graveyard instead, and if a card would be banished from the graveyard while this card is face up, you get to target a card in your opponent's graveyard and on their field. Sorry, scratch that. You get to banish a card on your opponent's field and in their graveyard without targeting, which is insane. So this card's really, really good. And then we got the Sinister Sovereign, which is a really solid card that we don't get to play enough of. Absolutely. If you synchro summon another worm while he's in the field, you draw 1. Neat. But its main effect is his next one. Up to once per turn each, if your opponent special summons a monster, banish it, inflict 1200 damage. If your opponent activates a spell or trap, banish it, inflict 1200 damage. So that's like 2 interruptions built into 1. I absolutely love the value that this card presents, and then inflicting that burn damage on top of the Long Wand's burn damage that was used to summon it, you're going to bring him down by 3600 life points just in effect damage off the rip, which is insane. My only problem with this card is that Evenly Match exists, so you almost always have to go Baron de Fleur as your first level 10 summon to protect yourself from Evenly Matched. But if you didn't, it would be this guy. He's choice number 2. He's pretty damn close. If your opponent doesn't have Evenly Matched, usually he's actually better value than Baron de Fleur. Especially in this meta with like tier everywhere. This card crushes tier elements, banishing their Suliak, banishing their Scream, banishing their Kikkalos, banishing whatever the hell it wants, and inflicting a bunch of burn damage. So this card's incredible. I just wish Evenly Matched didn't exist and we didn't have to play Baron. That's it. Psychic and Punisher. This card we've seen more than enough times on the channel. While you have less than or equal to your opponent's life points, this card is unaffected by activated card effects, which is great. Once per turn, pay 1000 life points, target one of your monsters and any one of your opponent's cards and banish both. And then lastly, during the start of the battle phase, this card will gain attack points equal to the difference between your life points, which is solid. This card is primarily here as a level 11 backup target. There are certain situations in which you will want a level 11. Formerly in SWORDSOUL, it's because you would have wanted like a Circle of Heavenly Dragon combo. I don't know what the name of the spell card is. Where is it? This one here, Heavenly Dragon Circle. You would typically play Psychic and Punisher to give yourself a Heavenly Dragon Circle target in order to bring out Psychic and Punisher off of like a Vishuda and a token. In this particular version, it's more applicable with the likes of Ecclesia and a Kashtira, but it's still just as applicable, so don't sleep on it. Got our 2 Exceeds. We got number 89 and the Shangri-La, Kashtira Shangri-La. During the standby phase, special summon a Kashtira monster from the deck, and if a card is banished face down while this card is face up, you get to target an opponent's zone and lock it up. It cannot be used until they get rid of this card, and he can resist being destroyed by detaching an Exceed material. Awesome card overall. I hope it gets banned. Number 89, Diabolosis. Once per turn, detach a material, look at your opponent's extra deck, banish a card face down. At the end of the battle phase, in which case he destroys an opponent's monster by battle, banish a card from their graveyard, face down. And once per turn, if a card is banished face down, this card can activate free of charge to banish cards from the top of your opponent's deck, directly equal to the number of cards they currently have banished face down. So he just banishes a bunch of shit face down, essentially. If you didn't pick that one up, that's what he does. He's excellent in combination with Shangri-La, of course, because you get to log up a bunch of extra monster zones. Pretty toxic. I definitely hope this card gets banned. I don't even think Diabolosis is the problem. I think they could even leave the... I know a lot of people want this banned because it quote-unquote nerfs this, but I think my problem with Kashtira is that this card's mechanic is just so inherently toxic that I just hate it. I don't even think it's that good if you remove Diabolosis. I just dislike it as a mechanic. I just... Like, a lot of people complain about floodgates and skill drain and rivalry and whatever, and they're just like, oh, you're stopping me from playing the game. No, this is stopping you from playing the game. This is stopping you from playing the game. So I hate this card. I hope this gets banned, 100%. Or at least limited to 1. Diabolosis, I wouldn't be sad to see it go, but this is not the problem card. This card makes this card a lot worse, and makes this even more of a problem, but this is the problem card. But anyway, I digress. Finishing off the deck profile, we got Double Monk just to facilitate some of our Tenyi effects. I literally never summon this guy. I can see the utility still in having him in this version of the deck, but we've so often used our Tenyis for other purposes, or so seldom summon them out of the field, that you could honestly, if you had like a card you really wanted to play in the extra deck, you could cut Monk to 1. I think it is very safe. And speaking about cuttable cards, you could definitely cut Shaman. Again, takes 2 worms to summon out. You can discard a card and target a worm engrave to special summon it, but for the rest of the turn you can't activate special summon monsters from the extra deck except Tenyi cards. It's fine. It's a good card for follow-up, which is why I like it. It's really good in combination with your Taya for trying to break a board or like to stage a comeback, but it's not like game breaking, and considering a lot of what you're playing isn't worms, it's not always even applicable. So if you really had shit you wanted to play, you could cut Shaman and maybe Monk down to 1, and that gives you 2 spots to play with. But again, up to you. I advise caution in doing that, because I feel like you will miss those cards in one matchup, and then you will cry, and then you'll come to my video and you'll call me a villain, and yeah. So don't do that. But there you go. That's the deck. Again, absolute blast. There's not really much else to be said about it. It is pretty straightforward, although it does have a relatively high ceiling because there's a lot of things you can do with it. Small world, again, you could basically bridge anything into anything because there's always something in common, but they're unique enough to where they don't overlap too much, which is just amazing. And yeah, that's everything. Subscribe if you got this far and you're not subscribed. Like the video if you haven't. Consider joining as a member if you have the ability to do so. Again, every little bit does definitely add up, and I 100% appreciate it. But with that being said, I'll see you next time. Bye bye. I'm fading out of existence. Oh no.